Hey guys, welcome to lecture number 20, Computer Science 190. Okay, so today is October 22nd. Today we'll be talking about methods. I want to introduce a couple of new concepts. Well, first off, here's an example of a method, right? So we have a main method, okay, and we have a method called max. So max is supposedly something which is going to calculate and return the maximum of two values, num1 and num2. So again, what do we have to do to make this connection work? We need to first off create a method, and then from the main method, we need to call that method. So calling is a technical term, calling or invoking. Okay, so invoke. We're going to invoke method max from the main method. Okay, yeah. So the method max needs to be outside of the main method. Okay, that's number one. So don't put it inside of these curly braces, right? And now let's quickly remind ourselves about the basic parts of the method. Okay, so max is the name of the method. Public static, that is the modifier, so-called. Okay, so don't really think about what it means yet. Just always put public static. Int is the return type. Okay, so that means that max is going to, as a method, is going to return back to the main an integer. Okay, and here at the end you see we have a return result. And what is result? Result, here you can see it's an integer, right? So we return an integer back to the main. These two things, right? So the comma separated list and the parenthesis is so-called parameter list. Okay, so these guys are called parameters. Okay, and now when we call in this method, right? So int I is equal to 5, int j is equal to 2, int k is equal to max of I, j, right? So I is 5, j is 2. I is being passed, so in other words, 5 is being passed to num1, okay, and j is being passed to num2, okay, which means that here inside of this method, num1, the value of num1, right, is the value of I, which is 5, and the value of num2 is the value of j, which is 2. Okay, yeah. So all the stuff between this brace and this brace is called the body of the method, which is kind of similar to the loop, right? So the body of the loop is the stuff between the parentheses, so the braces, which is being executed multiple times, kind of like here. The stuff which is being executed between the parentheses, right? That's called the body. Okay, so this code is pretty simple, right? So it's basically like finding the maximum, the biggest out of the two numbers, num1 and num2. Okay. So how do you do that? If num1 is greater than num2, what does it mean? That means num1 is bigger. That means you need to return num1 and assign it to k. That's why you assign num1 to result, and then you return the result. If this is not true, which means num2 is greater than num1, or num2 is equal to num1, then you can return num1. Okay, num2 is assigned to result, and the result is being returned back to k. Okay. And then print out the maximum of I and j, right? So 5 and 2 is k. Okay, k comes from the method max. In our case, it's going to be 5. Okay. So here's a tricky one. There is something which is called pass by value. Okay, so that's a technical term. Sometimes it's actually being asked at the interview, so highly recommend knowing what that is and being able to explain it. Imagine you have the following code. Increment, okay, class, well, it doesn't matter, right? So we have the main method and you have the increment method. Okay, so what happens in the main method? Int x is equal to 1, okay, so we're creating a variable, x, integer, 1. Print out before the call, okay, so what do they mean by call? They mean, when they say the call, they mean call of the method increment, okay? So basically before increment x and after increment x. So before the increment x is plus x, so here we print out x, okay? Increment, so it comes over here, jumps over here. X, we increment an x which was 1, n plus plus. Print out n inside of the method is plus n, right? And then we jump it back. Okay, so keep in mind that it's void, right? So it doesn't return anything back. It just does something to n, right? And then we print out after the call, after doing this, what is x, right? So the question I usually ask my students is, what's the output of this code, right? What is the logic here? Okay, so well, first off, it's obvious that here you will print out 1, right? Because this x is this x, right? So that's 1. The whole confusion is here when I'm calling increment, right? So that x becomes n. So here it's n plus plus, which is basically x plus plus, right? Which means 1 plus plus. So and now n becomes 2. So here I'm going to become 2, right? N inside the method becomes 2. Okay, so basically the entire printout will be 1 here, 2 here, and then when it comes back and it prints out after the call x is that going to be 2 because we incremented, because we passed it over here, okay, incremented that, and now it's 2, or is it going to be 1? Okay, so the right answer is going to be 1. It's going to be 1. Here's why. Because whenever you call in a method like this, when you put x in the parentheses, you are not actually passing x, which becomes n. You pass in the value of x. Okay, so that's why it's called pass by value. So you pass in the value of x, which is 1. So you pass in 1 to this method, and n is being assigned to 1 here. You whatever you do here, it has nothing to do, never, it has nothing to do with this x. You can just do with like, especially if I call it x. So here you see this at like int n, but I can also call it int x and then say x plus plus, and that creates even more confusion. Even more students get lost with that, because here we have x, here we have x. It kind of creates a connection, right? So no, those are two separate things completely, right? Yeah. So again, we pass in when we call in this method, we pass in not x, but the value of x, right? Which means n is being assigned to 1. Okay. Then we increment n, and basically at the end of this method, n is destroyed completely. So n does not exist outside of this method. Then we jump back over here. After the call, x is the same value of x. Okay. So the printout here will be 1, and that's something which is called pass by value. Okay, hope it makes sense. Just keep an eye on that. The most important thing here is that those are not related completely. Okay, whatever happens in the method, that does not affect the outside, anything outside of this method. Okay, because we pass in the value. Later, if you take 226, 227 classes, in this case, you will learn later that it's possible also pass not the value but the reference. Okay. So in this case, yes, when you pass in x over here, you do something to x, and then this x will be changed. But as of now, for now, just remember that it's not possible. Okay, those are two different things. Moving on, method overloading. Okay, so what's method overloading? So let's say we have the what is it? Max, right? So method called max. Okay, let's create one. Public int max. Okay, here I'm going to add two integers, int a, int b. Okay, and I'm going to say return a plus b. Okay, now what does it do? It adds two numbers, and those two numbers need to be integers, right? So for example, if I want to add two numbers, two integers, for example, 5 and 7, right? 5 and 7. In this case, this method will be called, right? However, what happens, for example, if I want to be able to add both integers and doubles? Okay, so in this case, if I say, for example, 5.5, 7.5, do you think it's going to work? No, right? Because this max cannot accept doubles. Why? Because here it clearly says like int a and int b. Okay, so it cannot accept doubles. So if I run it, what do you think we're going to see? Error, right? Okay, so why? Because again, it just thinks that this max is different from this max. They do not match. Okay, so in this case, what do I have to do? I'll probably have to create two methods. Okay, so I would say, for example, max of ints, something like this, right? And then I would create max of doubles. Okay, double A, double B, A plus B, okay, and also I need to return a double, right? Okay, so max of doubles, run it. No, why not? Public, static, oh, they need to be static, sorry. No, still no. Huh. The compatible types, possible lossy conversion. What? Max of doubles. Okay, it's this one. Lossy conversion from double to int. Huh. That's interesting. Double A1 5.5, double A2 5.5, A1, A2. Max of doubles. That is weird. Hold on. Oh, int. Okay, sorry. It needs to be double. Right, perfect. Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, so because here I'm returning a double, right? And if I have an int here, in this case, I have double on the right-hand side and int on the left-hand side. So I cannot assign double to an integer. Right, okay. Awesome, makes sense. Yeah, so in this case, I'm going to have two methods, max of ints, max of doubles, right? So they do exactly the same thing. They just add two numbers, okay? But I can't, yeah. But they have to be called differently. Now, if I want to create another type, so another max of, right, for, not max of, that's not even a max, damn. It's addition. So add ints, add doubles, okay? Now, if I want to create another method, which will be adding something else, let's say something specific, maybe even characters. Okay, it's possible to add characters, by the way. Chars, okay. Char A and char B. By the way, play with that. Check out what was going to happen if, for example, I say, try to run this code. You'll probably be surprised. Something like A, okay, and then B. Okay, what happens if you add A and B? So A plus B. What was that going to be? Okay, now if I want to have add strings, right? Add strings. So here I'm going to have string A, string B, okay, and string here. Okay. So anyway, add string, right? So in this case, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 methods with exactly the same functionality but different names. Okay, so in order to avoid that, in order just to have one add which will take into account all, no, not like this. Now, in order to avoid the confusion with the names, okay, because it will be much better if all of them would be just called add, okay, just like this. So imagine a situation, I would just say add, right, and I would pass the parameters, and Java will automatically understand which add am I talking about. Which add, right? And it's obvious. I mean, it should be obvious, right? Because I'm passing two characters. That's why I'm definitely not talking about this one. I'm definitely not talking about this one. I'm definitely not talking about this one. I'm talking about this one, right? So Java, as it turns out, is smart enough to understand that when I say something like this, I'm actually meaning this method. And that's something which is called method overloading. So that programming technique where I would have different methods with exactly the same name but different signatures, which means different parameters, right? That's called method overloading. So Java will not be confused. So it's not going to say, for example, oh, you have two adds, I'm not sure which one to run. No, it's going to try to understand which one you're trying to mean, which one you mean by the parameters inside the parentheses. Okay. Yeah. So that's so that programming technique is called method overloading. For example, here, let's not kill the intrigue. Let me just add two numbers. Okay. So that should work. I hope it works. Okay, perfect. Okay, awesome. Okay, yeah. Very cool, very cool. What else? What else should I say? So it's possible to have different types. It's also possible to have, for example, different number of parameters. Okay, so for example, here if I call this, then it's not going to throw any error, right? It's going to call this one. If I add one more parameter, then Java will understand that this is the one which should be run. Okay, so no problem here. However, if I, for example, say 5.5, in this case, that's going to be a problem. Why? Because there will be no method which matches this set of parameters. Okay, there will be no method which accepts the first parameter being an integer, second parameter being an integer, third parameter being a double. Okay, so if I run it, it should throw an error. Yes, perfect. Okay, so it throws an error. Well, it says something like possibly loss of conversion, but it probably doesn't mean much to you, so don't really pay attention to that. Luckily, again, it just puts the it tells you what line the mistake is at. Okay, cool. What else? What else? I can also mix. I can also do something like this. For example, I can also, for example, say double here and double here. Okay, now let's compare these two methods. The first one adds a double in an integer. The second one adds an integer and a double. Okay, so technically you may be thinking doesn't make like there is no difference in between. No, there is a huge difference. The first parameter has to be a double. The second parameter has to be an integer. Okay, so for example, let me demonstrate system.out.println. Okay, let me demonstrate. Let's say something like this. Okay, so in this particular case, what should happen? Here I have let's say 5.5. Okay, the first parameter I'm passing is a double. Second parameter I'm passing is an integer. So this one should be called, not this one, right? So the answer should be 10 and a half. No. So double here, I need to convert it to double. No. Okay. Okay, and some conversions here, just complying with Java's rules. Okay, perfect. Okay, so again, which one is being called? This one, right? So the answer is 10.5. However, if I swap them, if I say 5 and 5.5, then this one is not going to work, right? Because here the second parameter is the double, right? So this one is an integer. That's why this one should be called, because the first one is an integer, second one is a double. So I'm going to call this, and now it should have, what is it, 27.5. Okay, so that's the multiplication between 5 and 5.5, the product. Okay, so yeah, that's what you can do. There are some things. By the way, I want you to experiment with this. Try to run. Yeah. So try to run something like this. Okay. Then we don't need that. I don't know. So a plus b, a times b, a times. Let's say just 0. Okay. So try to run this. So it's interesting. Like you see, if I have 5.5, like 5 and 5, right? Those are two integers. However, integer can also be double. It can be automatically wrapped into double. So integer can be automatically typecasted into double if needed. Okay. So for this particular one, is it going to call this one or that one or that one? Okay. So that's an interesting experiment. Okay. Or try to remove this one. Yeah. By the way, so try to run this code. is it going to call this one or that one? Okay. Yeah, so try just playing with that. Now, what else? What else I want to show you? That's it. So that's it for the method overloading. Okay. Method overloading. Okay. So yeah, if you call the max with int parameters, the max method expects int parameters, right? As we said. If you call max with double parameters, the max method that expects double parameters will be invoked. Okay. Again, invoke, to be invoked is a technical term. So definitely, guys, you need to learn that. This is referred as method overloading. That is, two methods, okay, have the same name but different parameter lists within one class. The Java compiler determines which method to use based on the method signature. Okay. Yeah. So for example, here you see we have like max with doubles, okay, and at the beginning we have max with integers, right? So that's an example. Another topic, another thing I wanted to discuss is scope of the variables. Okay, so what is scope? What is scope? Basically, a scope of variables is a space in the code, amount of the code where the variable is seen. Okay, so what does it mean? Check this out. For example, A1. Okay, so if I try to print this out, okay, the answer is obvious, right? A1. Sorry, 5.5, right? However, imagine if I swap the lines of swap these lines. Okay, so in this case, I'm trying to print out A1, and then I'm going to create it. Since Java is processing all the code from top to bottom, it's going to be super confused. Okay, in some programming languages, for example, which ones? I think in JavaScript, and as far as I remember, in Python, that doesn't really matter. Before any code is processed, the variables are created first, and then no matter where they declared. Okay, but in Java, it's super important. First off, you need to create a cookie, and then you need to edit, not vice versa. Okay, so if I run this now, that should throw me an error. Okay, perfect. Now, what is the reason for that? The reason for that is because A1 as a variable has its scope, right? Has the scope between the line where it was created, right, and this brace. So in which part of the code can you use A1? Only after this line and before this brace, okay? Anywhere else, for example, over here, it's not seen, right? So it kind of doesn't exist. Similarly, what if I try to print out A1 somewhere here? Okay, that's not going to work. Why? Because the space, so the place where I'm trying to use A1 is located outside of that that range. So again, A1 is only seen between here and here, and this is outside of that range. Okay, so the scope of this variable is between the line where it was created and between the end of the method, the main method, which is designated with this brace. Okay. Yeah, so the scope of the variable is between the line was created and the closing brace, okay? Right. So such variables which are seen only inside of its own method, right? The method where it was created and which are seen between the line that were created and the brace, those variables are called local variable. Okay. So local is something which is opposed to global, okay? So there is something there is a way which you can create a variable, using which you can create a variable, for example, A1, and which will be seen everywhere, absolutely everywhere. Like it will be seen here, it will be seen over here. So that would be kind of, it's like so global, right? So like you have a federal law and you have a state law, right? So state law only takes place inside of the state of South Carolina, but federal law is just true everywhere, right? So it's a global variable, and the state law is a local variable. How do you do that? So in order to create a variable which will be global, which will be visible everywhere, right? So you need to create it inside of the class, okay, which means after this brace, but outside of any method, okay? So basically between here and here, okay? So I would say, for example, double A2 is equal to 5.5. Okay, so in this case, let's see. Let's try to print out A1. So that should throw an error. Why? Because again, it's not in the scope of the variable, right? But let's try to print out A2. That should be fine. No. Bam, bam, bam. Non-static variable A2 can be referenced. Okay, yeah, so I need to say static here. No. Void. What? Oh, A2. Yeah, A2. Hold on. Yeah, perfect, perfect. Yeah, so there is no error. There is no compile error. Why? Because that doesn't throw any error. Okay, so that does not confuse Java. Why I don't see anything in the console? That happens because I do not call add method from the main method, right? So I don't do this. I need to call on a double like 5.5 and an integer 0. Okay. So now main method is going to call this one, and this one is going to print out A2, which is 5.5. Right? Let's make it 6.5, such that you will see the difference between A2 and A1. Okay, yeah, perfect. Okay, so again, this guy is called a global variable. Okay. What does it mean? This guy is seen everywhere, absolutely everywhere, basically between this brace and this brace. And I can also place it at the very end, okay? And that's not gonna matter at all. I'm also going to see 6.5, right? So inside of the method, yes, the code is processed from top to bottom, but inside of the class, that's not really how it works. They're all kind of created at the same time. Okay, so that's called a global variable. A variable defined inside of the method is referred to as a local variable. Okay, the scope of a local variable starts from its declaration, okay, and continues to the end of the block that contains the variable. A local variable must be declared and assigned a value before it can be used. A parameter in a method is also a local variable, right? So for example, double A, right? So that is a parameter in the method. It's also a local variable. Excuse me. It's a local variable, which is, and the scope of that variable is where? Between this brace and this brace. Okay, so it's kind of like a local variable which is created just like exactly at the time when this method is being called. Okay, so all of these guys, right, they are local variables to this method, okay, and they're visible only between this brace and this brace. Okay, the scope of the method parameter covers the entire method. A variable declared in the initial action part of the for loop header has its scope in the entire loop. Okay. So what does it mean? If I have a for loop, okay, I can create a variable right here. Int I is equal to 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus. Okay, and then here I can say system.out.println I. Okay, so this variable I. Okay, so what's up with that? This variable I is created inside the for loop, right? So it's visible only between this brace and this brace. So if I try to print out I over here, that's not going to happen. Why? Because I is not visible here. It's only visible between the braces. So if I call it, okay, I can't do that, right? But if I call it again, awesome, cool. Yeah, hope it makes sense. Very interesting question I usually ask my students as well. What happens if I have something like this? Okay, try to run this code and check out what happens and why it happens the way it happens, why it works the way it works. Okay, yeah. However, a variable declared inside of the for loop body has its scope limited in the loop body from its declaration to the end of the block that contains the variable. A variable declared inside of the loop, inside of the for loop body, right? So inside of the body, has its scope limited in the loop body from its declaration to the end of the block. What does it mean? That means if I create a variable here, for example, int j is equal to 0, right? So I'm creating a variable inside of the loop body. So that's the loop body, right? And I'm creating a variable inside of the loop body. What is the scope of this variable? The scope of this variable is only between again where it's created and the end of the loop body, which is this brace. So if I go, for example, something like this, and I print out J, right? So this will be valid. Why? Because I'm creating J, which is equal to 0, and I'm printing out J. No. No. I don't want to show you that. Yeah. So here I have 10 zeros, right? Between 0 and 10, I just printed out J, which is 0, so I have 10 zeros, basically. Okay, so yeah, but if I do something like this, if I swap these lines, in this case I'm going to run it and I'm going to see an error. Why? Because I'm trying to use J before I created that. Okay, so again, I'm trying to eat a cookie before I'm baking that cookie. So that's invalid. And what's interesting, by the way, is that think about that. Inside of the loop body, I'm creating a variable, right? So I'm basically, since I'm executing that 10 times, does that mean I'm creating 10 J's? The answer is yes. Technically, I'm creating 10 J's. So every time I go into a new iteration of the loop, I'm creating a new variable J, with the note that when I'm finishing the iteration of the loop, I'm also destroying J. So basically here I'm creating J, destroying, creating, destroying, creating, destroying, and 10 times kind of 10 circles like that, 10 loops. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so for example, here if I have int I, right, what is the scope of the variable which is created in the initial statement? It's between this brace and this brace. And what is the scope of the J? It's between the line where it was created and over here. That's an example. Okay. By the way, play with that yet. And I have a couple of practice exercises for you. So this one, okay, which is the same as this, and this one with the max. Okay. And again, if you're really hungry, I would highly recommend using this one. It's about the is prime. Okay. How do you make sure that the number is prime? Okay, perfect. That's it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed that. So please attend the lab tomorrow, and I'll see you on Tuesday. By the way, I wanted to make an announcement. Announcement. Okay. Midterm number 2 is on Thursday. Okay. What day will that be? So in a week from today. 28th, right? October 28th. Okay. Yeah, so that's when we're going to have midterm number 2. What you need to learn everything between midterm number 1 and midterm and Tuesday, right? So basically, if I let me draw a line. No, it's a different one. Okay, yeah. Okay. So imagine that's August 15th. That's when we started, right? So that's the midterm number 1, and that's today, okay? And that's when the midterm number 2 will be. You need to learn everything between midterm number 1 and up until midterm number 2. Okay, so midterm number 2 is not comprehensive. Okay, but other than that, it's pretty much the same process. You will have like 75 minutes at your disposal, everything closed. Okay, everything which was shown ever in the classroom, apart from those like math problems or apart from anything I was talking about the career, right? So apart from that, everything related to computer science between midterm number 2 and next Tuesday, right? So next Tuesday will be where? It will be somewhere here. Okay, so that's also included. Please learn that. Highly recommend paying attention to the slides and the quizzes. Okay, yeah. Let me know if you have any questions, and if you have any issues with understanding the material, I'll be happy to answer those questions on Tuesday. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.